So for the sake of the video, we just crashed, and I sort of lost the last video. So I'm going to go through everything real quick in like recap format. The primary thing we were looking at is resolution. So back in the camera settings, the two things we're primarily looking at are the film and the output resolution. That's these two blocks right here. Okay, so they have a direct correlation. They have a physical size, and then they have a digital size. The physical size is the millimeters, which is directly correlated, directly extrapolated from the physical properties of all these different types of film, which we're not going to use. We are going to look at different viewport settings and digital formats because that's going to be our primary media. The actual film properties aren't as important to us. So I mentioned that 1492 by 855 is a really weird size. That's it's not the type of format that we want to use. We want to probably pick something that's going to print and size well in the format that we're setting up in our presentation boards, which usually is going to take an example similar, or it's going to take a format similar to the example of our draft. Our draft being from last class, right? That 8.5 by 11 sheet with the half-inch margin all around. I think I didn't ask you guys for a margin this time, but I will be asking you for margins in the future. So 8.5 by 11 with a half-inch margin means it needs to be 10 inches by 7.5 inches, the final image that we're trying to work with. Okay, so at perhaps a good starting point is 150 pixels per inch, or DPI, or whatever you want to call the resolution. That would mean that the 10 inches dimension is going to be 1500 pixels wide. And then the height is going to be 1125. That's 750 times 1.5. So we're going to change this to 1500. And we're going to try to, or attempt to change this to 1125. But you'll see that it doesn't let us, right? And that's because we've got a checkbox right here that says lock film ratio. So if you uncheck that, it'll allow us to change this to the proper value. So it'll go from 1500 to 1125. Okay. Now that's not everything. The other thing that I showed you here before we crashed was the heads-up display. That's a very significant part of the process. Whoops, I'm not in the command bar. Go up to your command bar and type in heads up, and you'll see Maxwell toggle camera heads-up display, and that'll put your image format up here on screen. Okay, so that shows you that the film now is at 32 by 24, which is the right ratio that we're looking for, and basically the image is ready to render. So I didn't remodify anything in this, but I do want to just quickly show you the output, and we're just going to let it draft for a minute or two, and then you'll see that the output size and shape has changed a little bit. Well, anyway, I don't need to let it run out the whole time. What I wanted you to see is that this is closer to a square format, right? This will fit almost precisely in the position we want it to fit in our image. So, in our layout. So, I'm just going to kind of stop this before it even finishes here, just so I can show you what's going on. We're going to go to Photoshop real fast. It'll take a minute to load, so please be patient. Okay, we have Photoshop up. So I'm going to say File, New, 8.5 by 11, 150 pixels per inch. This is exactly the same format that I set up previously. So I'll just say OK. And there is my 8.5 by 11 layout. So from Maxwell, I can save the image. So I'm just going to drop this in my dump folder. I'm going to call this 8x11 test. Yeah, sure, 16. And I will find that file and drop it into Photoshop. Okay. Oh, sorry. I didn't set up my margins. So let me go real quick and set up my 1/2 inch margins. Although that ratio didn't look right when I dropped it in. Something looked off. There you go. Okay, so it fits right. I don't know why it came in and it stretched it the whole canvas, but anyway, before I even did that though, I mean, what you can notice is even though it didn't quite stretch the full length, right? The part that I want you to focus on here is the proportions of it. So if you look at the corners, right, you see that corner, the X that's going across the image hits exactly in the right position in that corner. If it was skewed, like it was too narrow, too landscape, too portrait, you wouldn't quite get that crossing in exactly the location that it's crossing in there. So you can very easily just pull these in and drop them on the corners, and it's going to be the proper size. That's all. So nothing special there, really. Are there any questions about that? How many of you already knew that about resolution? None of you. All right. Wow, that's surprising. That was shocking. Usually there's a handful that are like, all right, please shut up, move on. Okay, cool. So again, let me let that sink in. Let me reset, and we're going to move into a couple other things in a minute.